So for those that are watching this are probably wondering how we come to this, and it's a bit of a backstory, and we wanted to share it with everybody. On August 26th of 2023, Mark was leading a group of hikers up Baldy. I was along with him, back up, help out, and it was a great day. We had a strong group of hikers, 7 strong hikers, and heading up, and hour and a half in, we hit what we call the lookout. And everybody's in good spirits, good day. We stop and have something to eat and drink, and just joke around a bit and carry on with our day. About 10 minutes after we left the lookout, one of our strongest hikers as a matter of fact, Steve, decided he needed to go to the bathroom, so he dropped to the back of the group, and we carried on, knowing full well that he could catch up in no time at all. And about 10 minutes later, we started becoming concerned that he hadn't caught up with us yet. So we stopped and we had a talk with the group of 6 that were left, and Mark decided he would go back and make sure everything was okay, and that I would carry on leading the group on up the mountain. So Mark went back. We carried on up the mountain, probably another 10 minutes or so. Then we stopped, and I thought, well, by now, the 2 strongest hikers have still not caught us. So at this point, why? So I looked at my phone, and I had some service, which is rare on a lot of the mountains, but I had service. So I phoned Mark's phone. He's on speed dial on my phone. And Mark only said about 3 words to me. He said, "Phone 911, Steve is unconscious." And from there, the scenario carries on. So Mark will talk to you about what happened from there.
Sure. I'll just start from my perspective as well at the beginning. So Steve was a very strong hiker. I've led a number of hikes with hiking groups here in northern BC, and this hike was one of the hardest summer hikes, maybe not the hardest, but one of the top 3 in the area. And the day was perfect. The temperature was great. We started nice and early in the morning, and Steve was right on my tail. He was fit. He was having a good day, and you know what this video is all about is being prepared for a real emergency. And we're sharing from our experience, lessons learned, everything from the technology to figuring things out ahead of time to make sure you have the best possible outcome that you can have with what's going on. So anyway, like Gerald said, I had gone back down the mountain after we noticed this particular person took a bathroom break. He hadn't caught up, so I started jogging down the mountain calling his name. So every 15 seconds I was yelling his name to see if he would call back. And I remember thinking after about 5 or 6 minutes going down the mountain, I was almost back to where the last place I saw him as I was jogging down. And I thought, that's weird. I definitely should have seen him by now. And as I was thinking that, your worst nightmare, he was right there at my feet, face down in the forest. He had his pack on. It's like as if he was still stepping and he was down. So at that point, you can prepare all you want, but really what's important is having that skill to separate how you feel from what you need to do. Because if you can't separate those 2 things, you're going to be a mess. I can tell you that now. Anyway, I remember the first thing I did was had to roll him over and check his vitals. I do have first aid training from years ago when I was a volunteer firefighter. So I went through all the ABCs, and no pulse, no breathing. So I knew this was serious. So from there, I did start CPR. And after doing a round of CPR, I knew that in the top most important things you need to do, you need to get help. Especially I was in a bad situation. Just to set the scene, it was very thick forest. So trees were all around, didn't really have a clear view of the sky at all. There was really no cell service where I was. I checked my phone, nothing there. So what I did do was I push the emergency button on my Inreach, and there's a number of things around that. I think at some point in the video here, I will insert a clip, a close-up view of that Inreach, but you do have to hold that button for a bit, and it'll prompt you on the screen. I'm not sure if it's to turn it on or off. You hold it for 5 seconds, something like that. But anyway, eventually you'll see it, and it signals the emergency. So I did that, and I immediately went back to doing CPR. After doing a while of that, I then thought, okay, this is not good because the group is up the mountain, and they do not know what's going on. So at that point, when I went to do the cell, the Inreach, I tried to move maybe 20 or 30 feet to where there was a kind of a clear spot in the trees, hoping it would get out, because even cell or satellite signal may not work if you don't have some kind of view of the satellites, and it was very thick. I noticed I had like maybe 1 bar in my phone at that moment. So I had called 911. I got through for a few seconds. I tried to explain what was going on, and it disconnected. The cell signal was very bad. That's when, right after that, somehow Gerald got through to me. Now, an important thing to mention before I forget is, once you dial 911 on your phone, you cannot call anyone else. And I found that out because after the whole incident, and when I got home, there was no way for me to contact my wife through my phone. It wasn't working. It was as if there wasn't a SIM card, and I believe the phone goes into a special mode where only you and 911 can communicate. So anyway, you want to continue from there?
No, I'd like you to carry on and talk about the Inreach and
All right, so
the importance of it.
So the Inreach, the signal did go through, and what I could hear as I went back to doing CPR, and eventually, like Gerald mentioned, he got through for a brief moment. I could just say a few words, and that's when they knew there was something serious, and they started coming. I went back to CPR. But the Inreach, you can hear it. I don't know what the frequency is. Every minute or every 5 minutes, it makes that buzzing noise as if it's getting a message. And here's the thing. When you're by yourself, it's very hard to help someone in an emergency and communicate on Inreach. And Inreach is designed that you push that SOS button, and they try to contact you through texting. They try to send messages asking details about what's going on. They don't want to dispatch emergency resources unless they absolutely have to. So I looked back later, and they were sending messages and they're asking different things, but I was not able to, use my phone or get to the Inreach because I was performing emergency procedures during that time. So that was one thing. But what was really good was when I heard those buzzing noises. At that point, I knew, okay, a message did go through, because I wouldn't be getting all of these messages every few minutes if the satellite signal didn't get through. So that's pretty important, I would say, when you're doing some emergency function. I know you're trying to save someone's life, but you really need to make sure that you've gotten the help that you need. The big thing for me was I knew that the group up top, we had made communication, so that kind of alleviated some of that. So that was pretty important. And to communicate with the group, that's the other thing is, I think once the group came down, they tried to get a hold of emergency services. I don't know if one of the people tried the Inreach or something or not, but I'll take it from here because I asked Gerald to contact 911 because I knew there was some cell signal up ahead where we talked, and that's when you tried.
Yeah, well, before 911, one thing I wanted to bring up about these Inreaches, we don't know how many times on trail we've watched a group come past us and nobody has any kind of transmitter on them, hanging on it. Now, I'm not saying they don't have it with them, but one, it needs to be accessible. Two, the people with you need to know where that is in case you're the one that goes down. And three, do they know how to use it in the case that something does happen? And I don't see too many transmitters. Starting to see more, I shouldn't say that. We are starting to see more, but for the longest time we were seeing groups, no transmitters, nothing to protect themselves, no Zolios, no Inreach, and very important. It come to light this time for sure. So back to 911. So I phoned 911 and it was somewhat futile. Unfortunately, the way 911 works now is the people are all down in Vancouver.
This is specific for British Columbia in our area.
Yeah. And so they're totally unaware of where we are, what it's like or anything. And as I'm trying to explain to them, they're re-asking the same question 5, 6, 7 times. And I'm re-explaining where we are. And I'm asking again, have you got help on the way? Have you got, and they won't answer me. They won't answer me. And I'm getting angry. And then I lost them for a bit. So one of the girls that was with me, I asked her if she would try her phone. So she got a hold of them. I climbed up on a ridge and got a hold of them. So we're both talking to 911 at the same time. And it went on for the longest time before they finally actually told me, we have someone on the way. Guaranteed. I said, okay, I'm going to let go now. You guys can talk to the other girl, because at this point, I'm only wanting to get back down to see whether Mark needs help. So we're on our way down. She's talking to them. And to show you how unaware they are of our situation, we're on a very steep mountain with no real trail. It's a route. And the person on the other side in 911 is telling her that we need to hurry down there. And the reason that she's saying that is I had given her Mark's number because she kept asking me questions. I said, we're a kilometer apart at least. And so I said, try phoning him. And she managed to find out that he was performing CPR, and she wanted us down there to help. And she's telling us, hurry. And I said, not a chance. We're not going any faster down this mountain, because instead of having one person, we're going to have everybody hurt. So that's the issue with 911. If you're counting on your phone, one, you might not get service. If you do, they don't understand your predicament up here. And it's nothing against them, but they're not familiar with it. They don't know the names that you're giving them, and they re-ask and they re-ask. It gets incredibly confusing as you are in an emergency situation and you're only thinking about the emergency. And don't count on it. Don't count on 911. Absolutely have your phone, utilize it. I made a mistake on this trip. Fortunately, somebody else had a phone that I could use later, but I ran out of charge and I left my battery backup at home, something I never do, but for whatever reason I didn't have it, so I couldn't charge my phone. Like I said, we had enough phones, it was okay, but write it down. Remember your battery backup. And from here, we went down the mountain, met up with Mark. And this is another thing. One person in control. Not everybody. It doesn't work. Said to Mark, you need help. He said, no, you go with one of the girls down and wait for SARS at the bottom. So from that point, I left and we went down to the bottom waiting for SARS. Mark was still up there with 3 of the other people, one of them assisting him in first aid. So from that, let Mark talk about first aid a bit.
Yeah, so just before I get into the first aid, sitting here thinking there's a couple things really important to point out. Before you leave the trailhead, check your gear to make sure, is that Inreach working? Is the battery, close to full? Make sure it's working. We've been on a number of trails where, hey, my battery's dead for whatever reason. Maybe you forgot to charge it. Goes for your avalanche beacon, goes for your satellite device, whatever you're using, whatever your emergency devices are, make sure they're working before you head up. The other thing is for Inreach, and I knew this before from previous trips, if you are in a situation where it's not necessarily SOS, like let's say I had to contact Gerald saying, hey, I'm stuck on a cliff somewhere, I might need some help, which has happened, stuff like that. But anyway, make sure that you have your contacts, people that you need to contact for help. Like if your truck breaks down in the bush or something, that's not an SOS call, right? At least it's not for us. No. Anyway, so make sure you synchronize your emergency contacts onto your Inreach before you go into the backcountry, because you need an internet connection to do that. And that way you can select that person on your Inreach device to say, I need help. So that was a very important thing that I think some people get their device, they set it up online, but you need to test it out and you need to synchronize all your changes. So that was that item. Regarding the first aid, so I think the person who should be like I led this hike. I should point that out. When we did this hike, I was the hike leader. And if you're going to lead a backcountry excursion, I really highly recommend that you get some first aid training so that if you're going to lead things, that you know what you're doing. Because like, let's say that happened and had no idea how to do CPR or anything like that, you're kind of useless. Like, what are you going to do with someone who's having an issue like that? So you really should get the proper training so that you can actually be a benefit to someone. Decide who's going to be the leader early on. And yeah, so doing those emergency procedures, that's another thing is, you know, you can prepare all you want. And I've been at emergency scenes before with the fire hall, but it's different when you're completely alone by yourself with that person. That was what I experienced. So you need to separate mentally, again, how you're feeling with what you need to do. You need to practice that skill and figure out what you're going to do to help this person, and start thinking about when people arrive, what's the best thing each one of them can do. So from that point of view, when you do have a group, you know, it's a good idea to discuss with people what everybody's skills are. Is this really something that you want to start figuring out in the middle of an emergency? It's probably a good idea ahead of time to figure out with your group, especially if you're going on a multi-day, you know, who can do what? Who's going to contribute in what way? Oh, this person has experience with emergency situations. Okay, when they come and we've got someone with a broken leg or something like that, okay, they're going to help me set up a sling, et cetera, et cetera. So get a plan in place. And when people show up to the scene, when you're in the middle of it, start figuring out who's going to do what. Who's going to get better communication with emergency services. That's critical. Get someone to do that. That's what we had Gerald do. Who's going to, in our case, we had a number of helicopters coming. Who's going to be the person when you're in thick trees who's going to help that helicopter see where you are? It's not going to be you if you're performing the emergency procedures, right? Who's going to go to the trailhead when search and rescue show up and maybe they need to bring something up the trail, right? Everything doesn't come by helicopter. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, and these are all things that you should think ahead of time as much as possible. Like, I don't want to oversay this, right? Because what are the chances of this happening to you? Well, what did we think?
It happened to us, yeah.
Right?
We have a strong group. I would like to say one thing. Don't be a spectator. There's always something people can do. If it's cold, you can collect firewood and build a fire. You can build shelter to keep people in.
You can encourage people.
Encourage people. We had one like that, kept calm. There's just always something everybody can do. And to just stand there unnerves the people that are trying to do things. So find out what you can do. And I recommend go get some first aid training. Mine is old as well, but I've had industrial first aid training, and I was part of an emergency response crew. So I have some knowledge. I'm not the best, but at least I can do things. I can help, I can be there. And if it happens to be you're the only one with first aid and something happens to you, who's going to look after you?
That's right.
Other people need to do that. I mean, Mark and I each know what each other's skills and abilities are, and we get into the middle of nowhere. We have to count on each other. We got nobody to count on. Some of the places we get to are just absolutely in the middle of nowhere. So you need this. You have to have it. So don't be a spectator. Find out where you can be of help. There's always a place for you.
Yep. And just a couple things, sort of wrapping up the Inreach. It'll just keep buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. You will have to push that button, and I believe the instructions are on the back of many Inreaches. I don't know if yours will have it, but typically it says on it, push the SOS button for 5 seconds or something like that. You hold it for a certain period of time, and then it shuts off and it clears. Another thing is, remember, when you push SOS, whoever your emergency contact is will be contacted right away. I could not contact my wife. I was performing emergency operations. If you are in an emergency situation where it's not time critical, let's say, it's probably a good idea to contact your emergency person first through the Inreach, just to give them context so they don't freak out in terms of what's going on. That's a very important thing. You'll see other people who've made videos about SOS say something similar. If you can, contact. If you can't, this was my first time doing all this. Maybe when that group of people comes, ask someone to contact your emergency person to let them know you are okay, because they're going to lose their mind. Your whole family, your relatives are all going to lose their mind because the message is going to come back to them. So you definitely want to make sure you take care of that as much as possible. And beyond that, your cell phone, it's not going to work if you've dialed 911. I found out if I reboot my phone, actual hard reboot, where whatever the procedure is for your phone, where it does a full power off, power on, then the cell signal was working again. So, these are all just a number of things, when you're out there in the emergency, hey, how come I can't call people? What's going on? Well, that's just another thing to think about. So.
Yeah, a couple of things that I was thinking of. In your pack, both Mark and I carry pieces of poly. I got an 8 by 10 foot piece of poly, 2 mil, doesn't weigh anything, squashes up. You get a bad storm, you can make a shelter, or you can do, as I have done on a couple of occasions, sat on one end, 2 people can sit in it, pull it over top of you. Stops you from getting wet and cold. Hypothermia is a very, very big possibility in the mountains. So yeah, carry that along. We carry cord, we carry zap straps. We can build just about anything that is an emergency shelter that way. Fire starter. I guess I could pull mine out.
Yeah, we've needed that before.
You need to be able to get a fire going. So I carry that. There will start a whole pile of fires. That's cotton balls that are wrapped or soaked in Vaseline, and they burn hot and for a long time. And they'll fit anywhere. They don't weigh anything. You can put them in your pocket. But yeah, you have to have a few of these things because emergencies happen, and this was a prime example. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys, so this is the Inreach Mini, and just to go over a couple things here. So the SOS button is right here on the side. And to activate this, you need to pop this open. I'll try to do it with one hand if I can. There you go. So this is just a big plastic button here. And there you can see it. So then you need to hold down on that inside button for a number of seconds until it says it's going to send an SOS message. And by the way, to disable, if you accidentally somehow turned it on, you can also push it again and hold it for so many seconds and it will cancel the SOS. That information is, at least on my device, it's shown right here, the steps to turn on SOS and the steps to turn off SOS. So it's good to know. And that way it's kind of hard to accidentally press that button. So once you do that, this device will try to send the message, and you'll hear a bunch of continuous, every minute or few minutes it will keep beeping as messages come back from the emergency center. They want to communicate with you. If they don't hear from you for a while, like what happened in our incident, eventually I believe they just send emergency response, and they just assume maybe you're in trouble and you could only push the button but you can't communicate with them. Anyways, that's it.